All right, another podcast from the Michigan Institute of Athletics in Brighton, Michigan. I'm so excited about this because it's another part two. You're actually the first part two that was planned. Before Dominic, right?
Yeah, but you just got that one done first.
We got Dominic back in the studio first, but we knew when we sat down and we had that incredible dialogue. I think it's already got almost 600 views on YouTube. It's got a bunch of views on the other platforms. People were really engaging with your story, Emma. So, I can't wait to shoot this. Right before we get into it, let me shout out VetLife. VetLife is a 501c3 nonprofit company. It's a company of veterans for veterans. Every veteran faces difficulties when they transition from active duty back to civilian life, and VetLife is there to ease that transition. If you want to reach out to VetLife, you can do so through Instagram or Facebook, or check out their website at vetlifetoday.org. So without further ado, part two, Emma Roberts, let's go. It's all about you. Look at that, I'm rapping here. We're going to do a really quick synopsis. I'm not going to tell your whole story again, but basically you talked about your struggles as a young woman, finding yourself in the world, having to get out of your parents' home, having to just get your mind right. Like you couldn't really put your finger on the reason why you were struggling in a lot of ways, but you knew you had to evolve. You knew you had to take your own power. You've always been kind of like a disagreeable person that, was on a quest to find something. Well, if that's the way you're living, you have to be able to seek that which you're seeking. Mm-hmm. We got all the way up to the pandemic, and that's where like the whole world got a reset button. They got a stop button. It was, if you don't like to sit quietly with your mind, you were almost in hell for that period because so much was shut down. The world changed so rapidly overnight, like bang. Mm-hmm. Let's pick it up right from there. So for the people that didn't listen to episode 1, let's start with how things were at the start of 2020, like January, February. What does your career look like? What do your relationships look like? Everything like that. And then we'll pick up to how does the pandemic change your life? And then we'll build up to today. And then we can speak about pretty much any perspectives you have, today.
Awesome. Yeah, so when 2020 hit, I'd say I was in a relationship at the time with a nice guy, nothing bad to say about him. Ended up just like not having enough in common, I'd say. But within that relationship, I would say I was a little too comfortable. It's when I was probably in my worst shape, and was still working the same job, selling flooring, making okay money, not as good as money as I'm making now. But yeah, then pretty much out of nowhere, I think we were told just randomly one day, like, hey, we're not able to come back after this, like call any customers. They were basically allowing us to continue to do installs because if it was already scheduled or people already put money towards the material, then they allowed them to move forward, but we weren't allowed in the office. So it was literally just one random, I think it was like a Wednesday, and they're like, call whatever customers, if they want to get in the schedule, call people and let them know, they're going to get called from the manager, and after this, you guys are not coming back until we know what's going on, because they were just trying to follow whatever rules they had. So go home, and I was living in an apartment at the time with said boyfriend and my sister as well, which that probably didn't help things too much either, because love my sister to death, but we're definitely two different personalities. So I think that just gave me another thing to hyper focus on that I didn't need to. But throughout the pandemic, definitely drinking more than I normally was, because it just felt like there was nothing else to do. I mean, I would go on walks like every day. I forced the guy that I was with like 7 miles plus, because it wasn't a small apartment, but I'm just like, I'm going nuts. I can't just sit here. And every day was like, okay, let's, watch this TV show. Or we bought a lot of puzzles. We bought scooters, just anything to try to work on. I would like try to set a routine, getting up, work out, make breakfast, go on a walk. But it was just, there was almost too much time in the day, and, nothing was open. So yeah, you can walk outside, but that was pretty much it. So yeah, did that for about 2 months. My sister was still working, because she works.
So you were unable to work completely, like your income instantly stopped, are you saying? Or were you a salary employee or?
Yeah, the income stopped. We got unemployment, which just like everybody else, which I was still very cautious of. Not so much the unemployment itself, but the, whatever they called Biden bucks, the like random, $1,200 checks or whatever, which I was before I even looked into anything politically, was just thinking to myself, like, this doesn't make sense because, like, I don't have a family to support. I'm still able to afford my bills with the unemployment. Like, there's certain things that I'm like, why am I getting this money that I don't really need? So to me, I just threw it in my savings account because I'm like, I'm gonna bet any money in 5 years on my taxes, they're gonna be like, oh yeah, you know that $1,200? Yeah, we need it back. So my sister, actually everybody in my family was still working because my dad was firefighter. My sister works at a hospital, U of M, and then my other sister in New Orleans rebuilds houses from natural disasters. So it was still considered, whatever the word is,
Essential.
essential. Yeah. So yeah, I just tried to stay busy. Challenging part was that my dad would not let me see my mom. So my mom wasn't working. I don't even know if she had started at the library yet or what, but she wasn't working. But because of everything, he was like, yeah, no, if you're still going out to the store as much as you are because you're buying your puzzles and doing whatever, and we don't know exactly what's going on. And I'm like, okay, understandable, but you're still going to work. You guys sleep in the same bed every night. And then his like reasoning was, well, if I get sick, we've already talked that, she'll stay in your old bedroom and I'll stay in my room. And I'm like, you're in the same fucking house. And guess what? Does she go and get gas? Does she go and like, you can't. And the most fucked up part, because the more I started to look into things and started to like read things, I'm just like, something's not adding up. Like, this doesn't seem right. When has this ever happened in history? And how can this be portrayed as this killer, terrible thing that, like me, somebody healthy, I don't have any,
Comorbidities.
yeah, anything like that. Why would I be at risk, I guess? So I was respectful of his thought process, but just like anything else, I kind of would argue with him and say, this doesn't make sense. And even one point, my mom, I think this was after 2 months of not seeing her, my dad was at work or sleeping. Yeah, because he worked nights. So he was sleeping. And she let me come into the basement and we sat 6 feet apart and she wore a mask and she started crying. And that was so hard to see because she just wanted to hug me. And I'm like, this is not fair. Like, and I would, later on, I brought it up to my dad. And kind of because then when the vaccine came out, he's like, yeah, you're going to get vaccinated, right? And I'm like, based on what I've seen, I don't think it's necessary for me. I think if what you've seen and, if you have like pretty much everyone in my family for their job, they had to, working in a hospital as a firefighter, you're working around people. Okay. But for me, I'm like, it looks like there's been research that, some women's menstrual cycles have been affected and I'm young and so are my sisters. And like, that's a big deal. And he flat out said to me, he was like, how would you feel if your mom died because of you? And I was like, that doesn't seem like a fair statement at all. Like, of course that would be terrible, but why would that be like, you can't say that it was specifically for me. You're going about work and coming home in the same household. Like, this is not adding up. So that was a big challenge, along with just sitting with myself in my house and kind of going stir crazy. We were only off of work for a little less than 2 months. And then when it came time to come back, I was one of the first people that they brought back because the only other highest seniority person in my department was in her 60s and she wasn't comfortable coming back yet. And I was ready. I'm like, unlike majority of the people that were like, no, I just want to continue to collect unemployment. I'm like, sucks. I want to go back to work. I want some sense of normalcy. This is awful. And so ended up going back to work. And for the first week, which again, they were just trying to follow whatever rules they had, we had to sell carpet curbside. That works out well. Bringing out fucking samples to people's car. And like when we have hundreds, it was just so weird. But then eventually, things got a little easier and they allowed us to do more. And we were still just, had to sanitize and wear masks and all that stuff. But that was actually when I started to then make the most money I've made, because nobody could travel. Nobody could spend their money out to eat like they probably normally would. So they were, so many people were buying and selling houses, and they were fixing their houses, or especially I think from starting to work from home and having their kids home from school, they were making office spaces, they were finishing the basement, all of that. And especially with how the staffing worked out, it was basically me and one other guy on top of our managers. And we had so many clients that it was to that, like, I was waking up in the middle of the night because I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't send that email, or I didn't call that person. Making great money, but definitely pretty stressful. But that's kind of what then started, I'd say, the consistent path that I've been on with the amount of money that I've been making.
So I want to ask a couple questions about the pandemic. And one of the things that it's like you're making me remember how much logic was just thrown out the window. Like you couldn't even try to argue what is obviously now ridiculous. Like things that were so blatantly ridiculous, you couldn't even address. And people wouldn't address them with you. They wouldn't discuss the logic of something. They would own, like, it was almost like there was so much fear dumped on people that their critical thinking completely shut down. You have loved ones that are sitting 6 feet apart, not hugging each other. You had people dying alone in hospitals. You had people, like, listen, I don't want this to sound, well, it'll sound how it sounds. I don't give a shit about what law or what rule is written. If you tell me I can't see my father, who is going to be passing away, I will have to be put in jail because I don't care that that's written down by someone on a piece of paper. I will walk right through your security, straight to my father, and give him a hug and tell him I love him. Yeah. I don't care what the law says. I care about, is it right? Is it just? Is there a proper reason for this? But like, people blindly followed some of the most chaotic and insane rules so obediently. I watched 90% of the people I know in my life instantly drop to their knees and just listen to what they're told. And I was like, wow, I thought I take an extreme pride in the United States of America. We talk about how free we are and how brave we are. Like, this is the land of the brave, Emma. Like, we're the people that can stand up to tyranny. We can stand up to the darkness. We can stand up to opposition. Like, that's what we are as Americans. No, we're not. That is a surface presentation. And maybe if poked and prodded the right way, there are a lot of red-blooded Americans that'll say no. And maybe it's different levels based on different chaoses. Like maybe to terrorism, you can round up an incredible amount of patriotic support. Like, you know, when 9/11 happened, the whole nation kind of came together and was like, all right, you do this, like, we're going to crush you now. But I witnessed in 2020, people are willing to just do as they're told if they're afraid. And one of the things that I want to ask you about first, and if you're not willing to disclose this, that's fine. With the overwhelming pressure to get vaccinated, and yet you being on the other side where you're like, this is against my beliefs. Who won that fight? Did the pressure make you cave, or did you hold your ground and you still to this day never received the vaccination?
Yeah, no fucking chance. I was not going to do that. I'm the only one in my family that didn't. And my dad would still, like, even months after, kind of brought it up and was like, I mean, and pretty much my repercussion, because if he wanted to say, oh, what if you kill your mom? You know, she dies and it's your fault. If he wanted to go to that level, I said, okay, let's say, because I have two sisters. I said, let's say in 5-10 years, me and my sisters are in relationships, married, trying to have children, and they have problems and I don't. Are you going to say that I was wrong? Because nobody knows.
No, Dad, how about you take the blame? Are you going to look at the fact that you're going to look at your daughters and say the reason you can't bear children and the reason, or let's say you have a vaccine complication, you get a blood clot, you're dead. Are you going to go, wow, I killed my daughters? Or is that an unrealistic, unfair guilt to put on someone? Dad, how many people have you killed in your life with influenza? How many people did you go by? You were infected with influenza. You got an old person sick and you killed them. How many people have you killed, Dad? Are these conversations we should be trying to have? Every time you step in a car, you know, should you be thinking about, oh my God, I have a chance to take someone's life? There's certain risk in the world that will always exist. Pathogens have been around forever. Coronaviruses have been around forever. This happened to be a new strain with a mortality rate, that was worth taking a look at, but it's also the first time we ever slanted statistics the way that we did for this pandemic. If you took flus from the past and you changed nothing about the flu, let's say from a couple years earlier, 2018, 2019, you don't change anything, but you report the statistics exactly how you report corona, which is anyone with COVID or suspected COVID at the time of death, simply having this virus will be declared a COVID death. If you do that just with the flu from prior years, some of those flu years had 6% mortality rate influenzas. That's insane. Mm-hmm. So what we saw was manipulation, deception, and I'm not saying it came from the bottom level. Like people were just confused. They were trying to do the right thing. 100%. You had people trying to do the right thing, but the manipulation on the presentation of what was going on is one of the biggest. I believe it is one of the most corrupt things that's ever happened in my entire lifetime, because a lot of people wanted to relate back to like the pandemic of the 20s, I believe it was, when
this like Spanish flu or something?
Yeah, the Spanish flu. They're like, "Oh my God, this is just like this." No, it's not. Like that wiped people out by the millions. With this, we had people's statistics reported differently. Mm-hmm. If I died in a car accident, but I was positive for COVID, I was a COVID death. If someone shot me in the face and I had COVID in my, if I would have tested positive, I was a COVID
suicides
death.
Because it was increasing. Yeah, I looked up on the CDC's website in 2020 how many people had died of the flu that year. It said 1.
100%. Guys, apparently we're going to tell our grandchildren 1 year, influenza, instead of killing all the normal people that it does kill, decided, you know what? I should take a vacation. I've been wiping people out since the dawn of time. I'm going to go ahead and take a back seat, and I'm going to let my boy Corona step up, and he's going to really bring his best to the table. And you know what? The people don't really know him as well as they know me, so they're going to present the statistics on him in a way that we've never done for any viral infection ever. Imagine, let's do this. At the time of death, if you have food in your digestive tract, we'll just call that a food-related death. The numbers would be astronomical. Mm-hmm. It's when you present things in a misleading way, people that don't understand how to navigate through what they're reading or navigate through the presentation will believe the statistic on the surface. Mm-hmm. And that can mislead people. And then you have family members looking at their loved ones saying, you're going to cause these deaths. You're going to do this. It was insanity. I cannot believe, though. Well, I kind of can. Because of your personality and because of your energy, I do believe that you held your ground. But so few people had held their ground in 2020.
Well, and what's crazy is my dad's the person that taught me to do that. And he was the one that was trying to fight me the most. When I told him that thing about the CDC and the flu reports, his response was, yeah, Emma, because people are wearing masks. I was like, do you not understand how viruses work? Like, the masks don't do shit. They don't do shit. And it just blew my mind that I'm like, okay, clearly I can't have this conversation with you because it's not, never in history have I seen, and I'm still fairly young, so I haven't lived that long, people so involved in other people's business about their own personal decisions. How open it was of like, well, did you get vaccinated? If you didn't, then you shouldn't be working or you shouldn't be here. Or
there was people on the news saying we should put unvaccinated people in camps. We should find them. I remember seeing a Facebook post multiple times. I remember almost verbatim. I wish I knew who it was. I should have screenshotted this. They said something along the lines of, if you get sick and chose not to be vaccinated, I hope that you or your loved ones pass away. Like there was even that type of evil in the world where it was kind of like, if you're not doing what you're told, I hope you die. And it's like, first of all, don't forget those people. I you know what I got to do in 2020? I got to see past the curtain with a lot of people close to me in life. I watched how quickly they turned on friends or turned on loved ones. And let me tell you what, if it happened once, it can happen again. Before 2020, if you tried to tell me what the pandemic was and that it was going to happen, I would have said it would never happen here in America. People wouldn't be that irrational. You can't have arrows in a grocery store that people will only walk one way down an aisle. That won't happen in America. It did. Mm-hmm. And it taught me you need to be very careful about the people that you keep close to you. Because I tell you what, like some of those people probably would have been happy to see me become super ill when I was, standing up to everything. And that's a wild thing.
Yeah, their level of delusion was insane. And it's just like you said, America's supposed to be, free thinking, freedom, a bunch of different cultures together and respectful of one another. If this is how the religion you practice or the belief system you have, that's great. And it wasn't until any other year prior, when there was an election year, you would talk about it that year because you'd be getting text messages and you'd see the commercials and it was annoying. And then you'd vote and it would go away. Ever since the pandemic, politics hasn't left the discussion on anything. It's been pushed down everybody's throat so much. And if anything, call me crazy, I feel like more right-leaning people are the only ones that try to at least see it from both perspectives and then agree to disagree. And like I've gotten to the point where I don't judge anybody based on, because I don't care, because before it didn't matter. If we, have the same, mainly the same morals or, are decent human beings, I don't really care. It's the same thing with religion. That doesn't affect me. It's whatever you want to do. But it got to the point where people are like, oh, well, if that's your viewpoint, then I can't be friends with you. I can't associate with you. And it's like, do you understand how dangerous to divide people like that? Bottom line, we're Americans. We're Americans. We're all here. We're all fighting for the same basic thing. We want to be healthy. We want our families to be healthy. We don't want to be told what to do. That's my thing. Just leave me the hell alone. If you want to get every vaccine and every booster and you want to follow arrows on whatever and wear a mask, to this day, more power to you. If that makes you feel comfortable, go for it. I'm happy for you. But do not tell me that I have to do that too.
That's where the problem comes into play, is when it says, like, not only am I going to obey this and follow this, and I don't want to discuss the logic of it. I don't want to have to defend my viewpoint. I don't want to look at any information that you could show that would show me that I am delusional. I just want you to do as I do. That's where it goes off the rails. And you just described the perfect, like, you just perfectly encapsulated the way that things should be. It should be, what type of person are you? Are you a good person? Do you love your family? Do you take care of your people? Do you care about the community? Do you care about the future? All of these things should be at the forefront, and whether you are religious or whether you're a Democrat or Republican should be so far down the list. Well, now with group identity politics and all those things, which it is objectively coming way more from the left than it is from the right. Like, I would argue that with anyone. That group identity policy is like, you're either in our group or you're out of our group. And that can be used in everything. You're either the oppressed or you're the oppressor. And when you look at people that way, you stop seeing the human in them. You stop seeing them as your friend that, if from their perspective, is trying to do what they believe is right, and you label them as the enemy. And then all of a sudden, look at human history. There's a lot of horrific events where it's us versus them. And that victimhood mentality that, I'm oppressed, or this is the only way to live and function. If you're outside of this, you're the enemy. That is one of the most destructive things in the entire world. What you just said, back to like, listen, I don't have to agree with you and you don't have to agree with me. But we live in a country that was established on the fact that, like, I get to live my life the way that I see fit, as long as it's not directly harming you. And when you try to tell me that I'm directly harming you because I'm not putting on my mask and all that, we have to at least discuss that. We have to at least break down the information. If you tell me to blindly follow that, I am not going to do it. And what you witnessed was people weren't even willing to discuss it. You couldn't sit down and come to the table and say, hey, these are the reasons that I don't feel I'm going to get vaccinated. You were labeled as the problem, as who knows what extent. If the angry mob could have had all the power to do whatever they want, who knows what extent it would have went to. And it's like, that's, like I said, I don't want to stay on the pandemic too long, but when you're not even willing to talk anymore, when the First Amendment of the nation starts getting eroded, and it's like, remember, Facebook, misinformation, fact-checking everything. And then later it turns out in court proceedings that these are just like independent people that are writing their opinions as a fact checker.
And they still don't acknowledge that that's what took place.
100%. I kept a journal, and I have it at my house, of all the things that were happening during the pandemic. all of these madnesses because one day it's going to be important to tell that story clearly as someone that lived through it, not government's version of the story, not the media's version of the story.
Yeah.
No, exactly what took place during the pandemic, and it's anyway, I don't want to stay on this too long because you and I could probably shoot a 2-hour podcast just on the pandemic.
Right.
So you were able to maintain your relationship during that period. I had thought you had actually broke up going into the pandemic, and I'm like, man, you're juggling a heartbreak through there, yada, yada. You have your relationship. You're just now getting back into work. It's actually a good opportunity because you're the rarity that wanted to get back in there. You wanted to get back to work. So now you're able to excel from what was a tragedy. Let's pick it up from that point.
Yeah. So the relationship, actually, I think it was towards the end of the pandemic that it ended because it was actually being in the household for so long that I realized the only thing we had in common was not only, but a big portion was our job because I met him through work. And he was actually, one thing I'm very grateful for was the person that opened my eyes to pretty much a more right-leaning perspective. He didn't push anything on me. He just had kind of mentioned certain names of people that he liked listening to or watching.
Would you say you were left-leaning before?
So I just always followed what my dad did. And my dad was a union firefighter. And my dad was always the smartest man I ever knew. And so I'm like, and again, politics never really mattered all that much prior to then. So I didn't really care. And then the more that the pandemic went on, I started to listen to Ben Shapiro, Candace Owens, Steven Crowder, but not really more. I liked when he would go to college campuses and have polite conversations and ask good questions. I don't really like.
He likes to be provocative too. He likes to be super brash. He likes to get emotions flared. And it's so easy to do in a lot of these topics, but it's that's not where you make progress.
No, it's not productive. You want to stay calm and say, well, no, this is but I enjoyed seeing the discussions. And then the more I looked at it, and then that's when I also discovered, I think it was through somebody I followed on Instagram, I discovered Andy Frisella. And that's how he would talk about the pandemic a lot, but then alongside the pandemic, he also had the mentality of there's no excuses, even throughout, because there was so many people that were drinking all day and getting super depressed, and suicide rates were going up because that's not normal for humans to be trapped and not be able to socialize, not be able to, go about your daily life, and your gyms were closed, all this stuff that should have been open for people's mental health and, your physical health too, that could help you fight a virus. But so then I started to listen to that, and that's actually when I tried 75 Hard for the first time. And it was through that then I realized that that relationship was not meant to be because I was too comfortable. I wasn't with somebody that I felt was willing to push themselves mentally. He definitely did in, different ways, but not the same that I did. And so, we ended up breaking up around that time, which I don't think we didn't really go about saying anything about it because we still had to work together. And I'm grateful that he's a mature person to where there's never been an issue with that. But that's when then I started to, because I was at my heaviest then. So I started to work out more, go on walks, drink water, really focus on what I was eating as I was going back to work, which I think was huge because it's almost like in the leadership class when that couple was saying how they were doing that move in the midst of them doing 75 Hard, they probably would have had a lot of different problems had they had not been doing that. That's how I felt probably during the pandemic because work was so stressful and outside of work, just the world, just everybody being angry all the time. And you see, if somebody's not wearing a mask and people just want to yell at him and tell him to get out of the store, and just a really toxic environment that you're surrounded by all the time, that if I wasn't doing that and had something else to focus on and work towards, then I think I would have definitely spiraled into much deeper of a depression that almost like I had in high school.
So I want to ask you two things really quick. And I also want to shout out the fact that we remembered that exercise and taking care of your body is actually the best way to protect yourself from viruses.
Imagine that.
I know that's revolutionary information that we lost somehow during 2020. We knew it before and we know it now again, but like keeping yourself in shape and like taking care of your mind and body is actually the best thing you can do. Imagine that. But with that being said, you had a motivation to start something like 75 Hard. A lot of the times people will hear about things like this. They will maybe feel a little bit of a spark of motivation, but they never do it. Like the amount of people that actually set out on a journey like that, and then despite the fact that the world's in a pandemic, you're just getting back to work, you're stressed like crazy, your relationship might be on the rocks. You chose to take on this big, difficult challenge. You added stress to your life. One of the quotes I always tell people that I'm actually going to say today when I do my story in our class is like, the secret, like the way out of suffering, a lot of times is through suffering. And that's super weird to think about it that way. But I tell like most of the fighters and stuff, if you want to change your life for the better, you almost have to look at the areas that you know you need to toil with, the things you have to fight in your life, the areas that are demanding more from you and you haven't been giving it. And you have to pick up your sword and shield and you have to step into those battles. What made you actually start? And then more importantly, how did you have the discipline to continue?
So I think it seemed like it was the first thing that I found that I was like, this is something that I'm meant to do. Like, this is a challenge that almost something or a mindset more that I've been looking for. Like my whole life, I felt like I'm different or I'm surrounded by people that don't think the same as I do. And then once I started listening to his podcast and he just, no matter what, he's like, there's no excuse. Like, I don't know if you know his story, but he was like stabbed in the face and went through a lot of stuff. And, it took him a long time to build his business to be successful. And I started to listen to that and I'm like, it just made sense to me. I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. Like, good things are not easy. And that's funny that you say that because I actually saw a quote on, I think it was Facebook today that said, life is difficult because you're either choosing to suffer or you're choosing to stay comfortable. And that's the truth is through suffering and through being uncomfortable is when you grow and you actually get a sense of fulfillment. And that's kind of how I felt. I didn't complete it. I think I got like 40 days and then I forgot to take a progress picture and I was so pissed. But I was definitely proud of myself. And I actually still have a video on my phone of, I think it was like day 2 and I was on my outdoor walk and I recorded myself and you could tell my face is so much bigger than it is now. And I was just saying, I was like, I want to do this because why not? What else am I doing with my life right now? There's no reason. There's no excuse. There's no, this is good for me. And so I stuck it out for 40 days. And then I ended up, when we went back to work, one of my one coworker, him and I did it together. But yeah, it just felt like it was needed. And I'm so grateful that I found it because I feel like that was really the start of my path of pushing myself more. And had I had not done that, I would have never sought out coming to this gym. I actually went to a different jiu-jitsu gym like a year before coming here, but the environment was really weird and it was a smaller gym. I think it was in like Ann Arbor or something. And so that kind of made me uncomfortable. And then I had a couple setbacks with like just the circles I was hanging out with. But I feel like that was the start of me realizing how crucial it is to do things that make you uncomfortable because it'll open up so many doors. I mean, just in the short period of time I've been here, I didn't want to do this podcast. I did it and I was so happy I did it. And then through that, Dominic gave me a book to read about real estate and then just other people at the gym, I went on a run with Tiffany this morning. All of these people and all these groups and connections that I never would have had and other people I've met, that we've hung out that have similar mindsets and again, we're different people and we may have different beliefs in certain areas, but we all want to be better. And that's the biggest part. And it's so cool to listen and be surrounded by that. And that's what I feel like the start was. I mean, it took me a while to find this place, but the second I found it and was in here, I'm like, yeah, I'm not going anywhere.
And it really does remind you that people do have a tribal tendency. People want to somehow relate to the people that they spend their time with in one way or another. And that could be a belief system, that could be through politics, that could be through you work at the same place. Like, people are tribal. They want to look at others and say, like, this is why we're friends, or we're from the same energy, or whatever you'd want to call it, or like why we're together. And what you got to realize is that can be as simple as these are people that are trying to be better in their lives. What I share in common with these people, it doesn't matter to me whether we have the same religious beliefs. It doesn't matter to me if we have the same political viewpoint. It does not matter to me what social status they are. These people are coming in here and making a commitment to be better human beings and martial artists. That's the magic. So many people can't figure that out. Like, everyone that trains here, they will tell you, and especially if they've trained at a lot of places, they'll go, something is different about the environment. The secret is, man, that's the magic, is I don't care about your background. I don't care about your political viewpoint. I don't care about that. I may adamantly disagree with you, but if you genuinely come in here and pour energy into yourself, into other people, and you focus on the point that we are the same. We're people trying to get better. You know what? Viewpoints change over time. Political views change over time.
As they should.
As they should. Like, there's a lot of stuff that your social status changes over time. But what you should like hone in on or make a core point of being is, I am on a journey to become better. You know what I mean? And like, when you do that and you surround yourself with people like that, that energy is infectious the same way that negative energy is infectious. And so many people that have terrible lives, if they just took a huge step back and viewed themselves like a therapist looking at a patient and said, well, look at the quality of the people in your life. The quality of the people. Look at the 7 people you spend your time with the most. You don't want to be like them. You objectively don't agree with a lot of the things that they do. They don't have self-discipline. They don't have all these things. But you expect yourself to be different? How does that make sense? Yeah. And when you start to evaluate the world like that, it gives you the pathway to unlock your own prison cell. Because what you're telling in your story right now, Emma, is I wasn't being held back by anyone or anything. I just had to make the right steps forward, or I had to find the right information to put me on the path. So once you set out on that path, one of the things that bites a lot of people is when they've experienced it one time and then they fail, they're almost more discouraged because they're like, oh, like I need to be this level. Were you able to bounce right back and get right back on track? And have you been able to maintain this personal progression since that initial 75 hard attempt? Or what like major setbacks have you faced? I don't want to bounce too far ahead, but
it's definitely been like a rocky road, but definitely slowly progressing forward. So started 75 hard. Having that one coworker was actually huge because he seemed, I feel like the pandemic forced a separation between me and my family. Not like a huge one, I guess, but I was always very close with my parents, still consider them some of my best friends. Like, me and my dad think he's one of the people I think most similar to, and it really wasn't until the pandemic that we had differences, but still just our way we process things is very similar. Like, everybody in my family, even my mom, she's like, you two are too much because we are so similar. The way we speak, the way our sense of humor, everything. And so I think that was, in a way, a good thing looking back, as difficult as it was to be like, why would my father say this to me? Why would my mom follow? And my mom's always just, she's the peacekeeper. So she doesn't want to ruffle any feathers. And if that's what, her husband says is the best thing, she's going to agree with him, especially with his job. He's in hospitals and, apparently around people that know what's going on. So whatever. But then it forced me, like, I felt very alone because I'm like, nobody in my life is looking at this the same way that I am. And I wouldn't even say I was obsessed about, researching and arguing with people and no, this is wrong. And I was just looking at it like, this doesn't seem right. And I mean, at the beginning, don't get me wrong, I didn't know what was going on. I was wearing a mask, I was sanitizing. And then the longer things took place, I'm like, something's not adding up. And then especially once I got back to work and there would be certain customers coming in that would, ask like, oh, are you happy to be back at work? I'm like, yeah, I was kind of going stir crazy. And they're like, oh yeah, I work in the fast food industry and I'm so glad I'm making more money being unemployed. And I'm just like, you're the fucking problem. Like, that's not how life works.
Remember, you could actually go to McDonald's and Walmart the entire pandemic. They were so afraid for your safety, but you were allowed to go to McDonald's or Walmart. You just couldn't go to the gym. You couldn't go work out or anything like that, or sometimes even be in a park in a group of people. That's dangerous. Don't do that. But you could definitely pick up a double cheeseburger and hit Walmart. I remember seeing that and being like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Again, no logic. Sorry to interrupt.
Exactly. No, you're fine. So yeah, I think that having that forced separation from my family, who great people, but definitely mindset wise were always in a different place than me, and I could just never really figure out what the difference was. And then when I started doing that, it put me on a track of like, okay, I really enjoy this. It makes me feel good. It challenges me. And then my one coworker, I told him about 75 Hard, and he was the only person that was like, oh, I'll do it. And I'm like, oh, awesome. And so it was crazy because we would then have discussions. And the one thing that I probably learned the quickest, like 2 weeks into it, is how much people complain. And it made me reflect on not only how much I'm complaining, but what I'm complaining about. Because, we were working with a ass ton of clients, always busy at work nonstop, but we would still be getting up at 6 a.m. and going and either like doing a workout or doing our outdoor walk at work, drinking a gallon of water, going to the bathroom every 5 minutes in between trying to take customers, making sure we're eating well, getting out of work and going and doing another workout. And then you'd have some people that would be like, I'm just so tired, or I'm just, I don't feel good today or something. And I'm kind of sitting there like, you woke up 30 minutes before you showed up to work. You've been sitting on your ass. You stopped at McDonald's for breakfast. Gee, I'm kind of thinking of multiple things right now as to why you feel so bad. And I wouldn't say stuff like that, but it really put into perspective of like, is this how I am? Because no wonder, like, of course I'm not going to feel good. And again, through forcing myself to suffer and challenging myself, I felt better than I ever had. And so that's what then I kind of progressed and kept with that. We did 75 Hard, and then
really quick, I got to ask before you skip this part. I know of 75 Hard. I have no idea what it entails or what it consists of. So maybe for the people listening, why don't you describe, like, I don't know if it's the same every day or if it's a different challenge every day, but like, what actually is it? Because I know countless people have heard about it, and it's obviously made an extreme impact on you and many, many others. Yeah. What is it?
So it's for 75 days, you do 2 45-minute workouts. One has to be outside. So it forces you, rain, snow, sunshine, 100 degrees, you have to be outside. It could be 2 walks a day. There's not really parameters to that, just 45 minutes and one outside, 10 pages of reading. And it has to be, I always screw this up, not like a fairy tale book, like
something educational.
Yeah. And he says like self-improvement ideally, but it doesn't necessarily have to be like that. A gallon of water a day, a progress picture every day, follow a diet. Again, it can be whatever. If you're trying to bulk, you can just have to hit X amount of calories and macros. If you're trying to lose weight, same situation. If you want to be keto, whatever. And then no alcohol for 75 days. So it definitely really puts in perspective how you spend your time, because a lot of people look at that and they're like, that's impossible. It's crazy. And then you do it and you're like, no, I just was dicking around on my phone for 20 minutes when I could have been halfway through a workout. And it really makes you plan. I could get the same amount of stuff done. If anything, I was more productive because I knew, I got to get this done. And then I can move on to this because I have to do this. And I know I have this later. And so you structure your day in a lot more productive manner. So honestly, one of the best things in my opinion that you can do, and it shows what you're capable of. People that look at it and, I could never do that with my schedule or with my kids or whatever. I mean, you can go on Instagram and like hashtag 75 Hard. There's people, with multiple kids that are doing it. There's no excuse ever. So yeah, it was very appealing, and I stuck with that for a while. And then
Is the program online that like anyone could just Google it, or do you purchase the program and then it tells you what each day is, etc.?
So you can just look it up online. He does have an app. I think it's like $5, and you can pay, and then it's just like a checklist, and then your pictures can be stored in there. But the whole reason, like one thing he talks about in his podcast is it's pretty much free. Like you don't have to, he even has a book. You don't have to have the book. You don't have to have the app. You can literally just write down what you need to be doing and check it off. And that's kind of one of the things he pushes, is because he's like, you have these fitness influencers that are like, oh, buy my program and I'll make you lose all your belly fat in 30 days. And he's like, that's bullshit. The only way that you are going to create habits and get better is through consistency, and not consistency of 20 days, not 30 days, 75 days. Because after doing that, you almost don't want to get off that bandwagon. You want to keep going and progressing because you see how good it feels and how realistic it actually is.
That makes sense. You're literally a different person by the time 75 days is over. You're a different person. It's not like, oh, I'm just going to stop doing this. You're permanently changed.
Yeah.
You're a permanently altered person that probably has different perspective now. You have different time management skills now. You have such an ability to fight your feelings now. If you've done something that you could have made an excuse, every day there will be a little devil on your shoulder whispering like, you're too tired, you're this, you're that, there's not enough time, blah, 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 blah. And if you can shut that voice up for 75 days, how could you not have profound change in your life? Like, it really is a brilliant strategy.
And even more so when, like, you're bound to, within that 75 days, have maybe somebody's birthday, maybe 4th of July, to where everybody's drinking, everybody's partying, you're eating bad. And when you're able to stick to it in a time like that, where everybody's like, oh, it's just one drink. Because the thing, if you screw up everything, you have to start over, or anything. You forget a progress picture, start over. And from day one. So it forces you to really show your mind what you're capable of, because everybody else is out partying on the boat, or everybody's celebrating the birthday, taking shots. And you're like, sure, I'll be the DD. No, I just want water. And then when you're able to stick to that and you wake up the next day and you don't feel hungover and you're like, I really didn't miss out on anything. And it really changes your perspective on what is necessary for happiness.
What was the hardest part for you?
I honestly would just say the water.
The gallon a day was the most difficult.
Just because if you don't, like, when I was at work, if I had a busy day and if I got sidetracked and I wasn't sticking, constantly sipping on it, then you're sitting in bed at 11 o'clock at night, just chugging water, going back and forth to the bathroom. And it was terrible. But I mean, don't get me wrong. There were certain instances, people would go out and drink, but quickly in the process, if anything, it felt good that I could kind of be like, yeah, no, I'm working towards something bigger than, and of course you're not going to understand, which is not like trying to shit on people, but it just made me feel more confident in my ability to have self-control.
Listen, to be able to tell the world that, like, I don't need your approval, I also don't need to explain to you why I'm doing what I'm doing, and progress through something that's good for you is a superpower. Most people need to get recognition for each step they make on a journey, or they need to feel like all of these other emotions to be able to accomplish something. When you can just shut all that off and say, I'm doing this for me, and I don't care if no one knows about it, I don't care if any of those things. When you make it to being successful, you've had to put yourself in order across so many spectrums of life that people only see the end result, and then they'll celebrate it then. If you're not going to get the celebration on the way up, is what I'm trying to say. You're not going to get the applause on the way up. You're probably going to get little bits of hate. You're going to get little pokes at you. Like when you're not drinking alcohol and all your friends are, you're the, like, oh, she's too good for us. She's this, that, or the other thing. Oh, you're doing this stupid program instead of just drinking. It's just one day. It's just one drink. No, it's not. It's not if it's the principle of the matter. And I'm a person that's very black and white in that way. It's funny because this is the gray area podcast, but Stacey will tell you, like, I'm one of the most black and white people ever, where, like, if I make a decision on something, it's like a light switch. And it's like, honestly, it's probably a character flaw, because to some degree, if I get pushed and pushed and pushed on something and then I finally, like, flip a switch and I'm like, okay, no more. I'm so adamant in that stance that like I just don't move. And you have to develop some of that to really bring out your best in this life. Because listen, it's not a fairy tale. You wish you would have all these, all your friends are just going to support you and they're going to encourage you and they're going to understand why you're doing this and they're going to prop you up and they're going to be your shield from the world. No, it's on you. It's like all on you.
If anything, it feels better once you are like able to get past that barrier. Because like I'd have not everybody, but certain people, like, they'd be like, oh, are you on that diet? Oh, can you not have this cookie? Or you got that water? And just kind of like little jabs, like you said, but it wouldn't affect me because I'm just like, that's an insecurity on you. It has nothing to do with me. You wish, it's basically a reflection of what you wish you could be doing. And you can, but that's on you. I can't force you to do it.
If we went out to climb Mount Everest and I push you all the way up the mountain, Emma, you might have still climbed Mount Everest, but it wouldn't feel nearly as good as if you got your gear together, you did the research yourself, you suited up, you looked at that insurmountable challenge, and you put one foot in front of the other until you reach the top of Everest. Mm-hmm. That right there is something that no one can ever take from you, because it's not like, well, if I didn't have this, I couldn't have done it. What you're proving to yourself is despite any obstacles, despite any stimulus, positive or negative emotion, I did it. Mm-hmm. Hearing about this now, I'm inspired. And I have a challenge for you. If you'll do one jiu-jitsu tournament, because you got to get your first one out of the way, I will do 75 hard. I promise you. I will, and Stacy will hold me accountable, and I'll show you. Like that way, you have proof in the fact that I've done it every day. I will do that challenge, and I will crush it. I will do it for 75 days without messing up. If you do your jiu-jitsu tournament, so we all have to look to the future and find our big fight, find our challenge, because through suffering is the way out of suffering. So, just like when you sat down in this podcast chair the first time, you said to me like, "I'm so nervous." Actually, you told me no. Our first podcast, you were like, no, like I don't really have anything to share. I don't have perspective. Like, no, I'm not doing it. And people, your episode is one of the most viewed episodes for its time period that I've ever done, including world champions, professional fighters, former professional basketball players. Like I've had a lot of like heavy hitters in this chair. Your episode has one of the most, like the highest viewership because you're genuine. You're just real. You're authentic. You're you. You speak in a way that is so relatable to people. So there's a challenge that I'm issuing you today, and you don't have to. Whenever you come to the table and you say, I'm making the commitment, this is that we have.
You know that I can't say no.
We have a Naga coming up in July. The day you step on that mat to compete will be day one of my challenge, and I will do it. Mark my words. I will do that 75 hard, and then maybe we could discuss it after. Mm-hmm. Maybe we could encourage other people to try it. So you start to change your life. You get to day 40. You have one minor setback. And a lot of the ways I'm relating that to like someone that's trying to lose weight. And a lot of times what happens is they do great for like 40 days. They have a horrific day, and then they throw the whole thing out. And recently I had a conversation with Bo where he had a tough day, and he's like, dude, I messed up this. I'm like, Bo, I got a question for you, a very simple math question. Is 76% better than 0? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, what about 43%? Yeah. What about 20%, Bo? Yeah. How about 10%? Mm-hmm. Yes, James. Well then, bro, have your 10 or 20 or 30% days from time to time and realize it's way better than 0. And if you get back on track, it is exponentially better than giving up. Mm-hmm. So it's like you have to frame yourself that it's not all or nothing. It's all or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's huge. Yeah, so I stuck with, I was still doing like the similar lifestyle of the 75 hard, just I guess not as strict. Like maybe I would only do one 45-minute workout a day until.
So you didn't go back to day one and be like, okay, I'm starting all over. You had developed some tools and skills where it allowed you to put cruise control on for a little bit. Is that accurate?
Yeah, it wasn't until me and my coworker did it together. Then I was back at it. And then I think that was definitely the path that, because we were pretty similar mindset in that. And then that's kind of how, I mean, not to skip over work-wise, like with the amount of money I was making, because that was something too. Like when I discovered this gym, there was multiple things. One was the mindset of being around people that want to push themselves and all this. But it also was, throughout my life, I looked up to my dad for everything. And he retired October of last year. And from 2020 to that point, I was making more money than him. So the man that I always looked to for advice and how do I invest this and how do I improve this, I felt like I finally reached a point where I'm like, your opinion is still valid, but I need somebody else to look up to. So when I came here and then started being around, and I kind of like, I always do math in my head about like, I'm like, okay, there's so many people here, blah, blah, blah. And then I see you driving a Ford Fusion in the parking lot, and I'm like, this guy owns the gym. What the hell is going on here? And then the one day on the side of the mat, the discussion we had, and just a couple times I had a chance to speak to you, then I'm like, okay, this is the environment I need to be in, because I like to have people around me that I'm not envious of what you have. I admire it. The atmosphere that you've built here is huge, in multiple ways. It weeds out the weak. And not because of, nobody's mean here, it's just a different level. And I've had that discussion with multiple people. Like,
Define weak, by the way, because it's not physically weak people. Like, someone that listened to what you just said would think like, oh, well, weak people aren't welcome. No, that's not what you mean. Define what you mean by it weeds out the weak, because it 100% does. But what do you mean by that, Emma?
it's like weak-minded, but not weak-minded. Like, I've been weak-minded in my life, but it's having a victim mentality. Anybody is capable of anything, but you're the only person that can believe that. And if you don't, then you're going to be the person that stops yourself from progressing. And here, people push each other outside their comfort zone. And that's what I've had discussions with multiple different people that will be like, oh, well, I've tried this other gym, or sometimes I go there, and they're like, yeah, the belt ranks seem different there, or, the way that people progress, it's kind of ridiculous. And I'm like, I don't think it's ridiculous. I think there's a very high standard set here, and I love it, because then it makes you not focus on stuff like that. Don't get me wrong, rewards are important, but that's not the point. It's the work that you put in, how often you're showing up, and, slowly getting better to the point where you forget about that, and the next thing you know, you're on the side of the mat's like, oh, by the way, this person got their blue belt, purple belt, whatever, and you were like, oh my God, I was just working on trying to improve my game, and not hyper focused on that, because I think that's where you want to love the art of what you're doing, not the trophies that you're getting.
1000%. You just summarized that so well. I don't want to have a horse on a stick, or a horse with a carrot in front of it. Oh, the reason you should keep coming to the gym is if you do X amount more classes, or if you do this, like, I'm going to give you your next belt. No. Every human being is different, and you all progress at different levels, and you have different commitment levels. I might not promote someone to blue belt for 3 years if they train 1 day a week, or they have no consistency, or they don't study the stuff, or they simply don't know it. If you don't know the material, I don't care how long you've trained. Mm-hmm. I've also promoted blue belts in 6 months. I've had people that they study it all the time. They work on it like crazy. They understand the art. They're engaged. They're journaling. They're writing things down. I just did a blue belt test. This person won't listen to the episode to this point. I don't think so. I think I'm safe to say this, but we'll see. If not, I got busted. But like Meredith just did a blue belt test and blew me away. Mm-hmm. I watch every one of my students, because it gives me like a mind map of what I need to do overall for the gym, mm-hmm. and then in individual people, like areas I need to make better. And what I need to do is I need to raise the foundational level so high. Like, I need the foundation of the school to be like, there's a massive group of purple belt level people. Then we can start getting into some of the extremes of jiu-jitsu. Mm-hmm. But anyway, I watch everybody, and I'm watching Meredith, and I'm like, man, like, she makes so many good decisions, but she also completely shuts down with certain people. Like, certain people, as soon as they start to bully her, she accepts it, and she like kind of lets them have advantages or lets them beat her, when actually I don't know if they could if she stayed at 100%. It's almost like she's like, well, I don't want to fight this person on this resistance, so I'll just give them this. And like, I was actually talking to her a little bit about that in the evaluation part. But when she did her blue belt test, blew me away. This girl knows her information. Like, she almost made the blue belt test easy. Mm-hmm. But why? So then the question is like, well, James, if you're saying that, why hasn't she been promoted to blue belt? Because she doesn't view herself as a blue belt yet. When she's on the mat, she knows the right answers. I just tested her, and she damn well knows exactly what she should do across a wide variety of things. But when I'm watching her roll live and she's going against Ashley, and Ashley's going to hit a certain pass or whatever it is.
Bully you.
Meredith 100% proved to me in our lesson that she knows the answers, but yet she would let her have that. Well, guess what that just told me loud and clear? That you don't fully believe you're a blue belt yet. Because a blue belt, even I don't actually care about someone's success rate. I care about, do they understand what they should be doing? Are they genuinely trying to do it? If you're not doing that, maybe a coach has never told you this, you might not get promoted here because you don't believe that you're that level. And you know what? And maybe the reason you never moved up in your company culture is because you believe you belong at the level you're at. I know people that I worked with when I was at Champion Chevrolet that was an oil change technician for like 7 years. And this guy could have moved up to being a tech. He could have been making so much more money. But you know what? In his mind, whenever there was a challenge that allowed him to go to school or like he just had to get these certifications, it was always, well, you know, blah, blah, blah. In this school, guess what? You got to earn everything. I will never hold someone back if they prove to me, Brian, Danny, that they're at the next level, but I'm giving you nothing. So if you're the type of person that's like, well, I've been doing this for this, so I just deserve, don't bring that energy to me. You're not getting anything that you just think you deserve. If you deserve something, it will be undeniable. If you want to get promoted in this school, become that level.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny because Meredith is one of the people that months ago, she had kind of mentioned where her boyfriend goes, they'll get the different stripes on their belts. And she was saying how she's like, it's kind of nice because it gives you like a little attaboy of like, that you're progressing. And I guess for some people that works. But for me, I was like, I don't even focus on the belts because I feel like then you lose track of what you should be focusing on. But time and time again, I've told her and Lauren, because because when I first started, she would kick my ass, and she still does. But my defense has gotten a lot better. Offense, still working on it. But defense, I've gotten a lot better. And she has multiple times said to me, she's like, you're unsubbable. It's so frustrating because I think she used to sub me so often, and now I've gotten better. And again, when you roll with the same people all the time, you can kind of get to know their game. But it just blows my mind the way that you're unsubbable. And I'm like, you were dominating that whole thing. Like, change your perspective because you're kicking ass. And same thing for Lauren. Like I said, the other day, and she's like, oh, well, if we were in this position, I would just go for a Darce. And I'm like, huh? Like, I don't even see that. And that just goes to show how good you are doing. And I don't know if like with Meredith, especially like, because Lauren, she has like Pat, and then they'll talk to other people, and so they kind of get a feel. Meredith is a little bit more closed off, so like she will even be afraid to ask a question because she knows she'll have to go in front of the class, and she hates it. Where like me, I'm obnoxious, and I'm like, James, it's hot as balls in here. Open the door, and everybody else is like, I'm not going to ask him, and I'm like, why? We're sweating. What the hell? And so with that, I feel like she doesn't see how she's viewed because she won't have conversations with people, except for the people that she always rolls with, which maybe she doesn't value their opinion as much, not in like a rude way, but just because she's like, oh, well, you always roll with me, so you know my game. And it's like, no, I roll with multiple people. I roll with some of the fighters that I feel like, majority of them challenge the hell out of me, but sometimes depending on the moves, Meredith she knows what she's doing. And yeah, she's impressive. She just doesn't believe it.
You hit the nail on the head so well that it is a phenomenal business idea to have belts around everyone's waist and give them stripes every certain period. It's like that's a business, okay? Like those other schools, like especially the gi schools, they know what they're doing. Mm-hmm. They know that they are way more likely to keep students in the door training if they just every 3 to 4 months they bring everyone together and then stripe everyone one more stripe on their belt. Is that genuine? Do people progress at the same time? That is so disingenuous to me. The fact that like, oh, well, it's been a period of time, so you all get another stripe. Mm-hmm. Excellent. I can't wait for your belt testing. This environment, the reason it weeds out what you refer to as like the weak is you don't get those incentives. I don't care about that. I'm not like, I do not want you in this gym if you're not, no, I don't want to say it that way. I don't want you to only be here because you're like, I deserve this, give me this. You should be here because you value the environment, you value the people, you value the instruction, and you are genuinely working to improve yourself and your martial arts game. Mm-hmm. If you are here for those reasons, the belt is almost irrelevant. It'll only be a recognition of the progress that you've sought after and achieved, and it'll feel that much better when you get it. When I promote people here, like when we just gave Zoe her blue belt, she almost started crying. And it's like, because I didn't say, oh, here's one more stripe, keep walking this way, here's one more stripe. No, you know what I do? It's on you. And if you are trying to change your life, I promise you, if you come into this academy, I will do everything in my power to help you just like anyone else. But if you ask less questions, if you don't fully take advantage of like, hey, coach, like tell me this or tell me that, I can only give based on what you're putting in too. If you're coming in and you're 30% dialed in because in your head you're like, I want my blue belt, I want this, I want that, I should be getting this, James should be doing that. You're only robbing yourself. You're not robbing me. You know what I mean? And so I don't use any of those methods. And maybe that's why if you look at our culture, it's so different than most places, because it does filter out the people that need that carrot on a stick. And it makes a group of bad motherfuckers that are here just to get better.
Yeah, it's full savages. And that's what I've realized. So the one time we did that good girls grappling here, there were girls I went up against. And this was when I had 6 months under my belt, not even. And I'm like, oh, how long have you been doing jiu-jitsu? Oh, years. I'm a blue belt. I'm a purple belt. And I'm rolling with them. And I'm like, are you sure? Because it's a totally different standard. And it's so much more rewarding. Because you know that when you get promoted, you earned it. It's not oh, well, you kind of did good on the test and you earned it. Because you don't just get your belt promotion without actually busting your ass and showing up and making time to progress and learn and ask questions. And that's what makes it that much more fulfilling, because you almost, just like Zoe, forget about it. Because she's training here 3 days a week, doing Olympic wrestling trials and all this crazy shit. And then she, out of nowhere, is just so humbled by getting her blue belt, when people like me and other girls that train with her are like, are you surprised? Like, you kick our ass all the time. And it's just, yeah, it's crazy.
And then what the magic of that system is that is how you have to be motivated in your life, man. You have to be motivated by become more before you actually get. Like, if you want to get promoted at work, become the person that deserves the promotion. Don't be the person that's like, well, I deserve to get paid more per hour. I should be moved up in the next.
Or that's not my job. That drives me crazy.
So those type of people, they can't function here. They can't function here because you're demanding that they step up first, and then the recognition will be given, versus being like, oh, let me pull you along. You know what it is? We don't do well with, like, I don't want to say dead weight, because I don't mean to describe it that way, but we just don't do well with people that don't want to step up.
Hold your hand.
We're not going to hold your hand. I'm not going to reach out to you and do all the like business emails like, hey, I haven't seen you in a while. Like, come back in. Like, you were so close to your next belt rank. I'm not doing any of that. If you're coming in here, it should be because you want to level up and you're going to give 100%. You do that, I promise you, if I could, like, if the magic existed, I could get everyone to be a black belt in a year, I would do it in a heartbeat. I would want an army of the most incredible savages ever. But jiu-jitsu is insanely complex.
But that's the beauty of it. I mean, I have Danny that says, after training 13 years as a black belt, he'll have some scatterbrained white belt that presents him a problem that he's like, what the hell? And to me, that's what's attractive about the sport, is because anybody else that's been in any sort of sport for 13 years is probably professional and better at it. And yeah, as a black belt, you're going to be better than others, but it just shows the level of everybody's brain and body reaction is different. And you can always learn from somebody that you wouldn't expect. And that's what's appealing to it, is because even after training, I mean, some people, I feel like that would deter them, because they'd be like, so you're telling me after 10 years, I'm still going to get my ass beat by a 12-year-old? It's like, maybe. But if anything, that just shows that there's no end. You can always keep learning, and that's life. That's everything.
The similarities are just across the board. I mean, it's so true about what you just said. This is my 20th year in jiu-jitsu. And when I was a competitor, like, I'm just a coach now. Like, I only focus on pouring 100% of myself into the people around me to build them up, because that's my fulfillment now. That's the chapter of my story that I'm on. But like, when I was a competitor, when I was doing really well in MMA and I had won some good tournaments and I had submitted some really good black belts that I respected. And I was like beating people that I didn't even think I could beat. Like I remember like the first time I darshed Johnny Ramirez, who's a Hoist Gracie black belt. And like, I remember being like, damn, like that's a big win. Or I beat one of the coaches at Rufus Sport, who's, coaching Anthony Pettis and those guys. And like I submitted him in a tournament. I remember being like, wow, like I'm really good at this thing. You know what's crazy? My knowledge of jiu-jitsu now makes me feel like I didn't understand shit. Like I was very good then and I understood a lot, but my knowledge has expanded so much. And it's like, I don't know if I would beat the competitor version of myself. So that's a weird thing to look at. Me now, 20 years into jiu-jitsu, but I'm 35 and I'm coaching. I don't train myself to be a competitor. So with that being said, I wonder if I could face the 25-year-old James Gray. I understand the art much deeper, but does that mean that I could beat someone that my timing was super sharp? I was so slick on all the series because I was hitting them every day, boom, 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 training for my fight. The question is like, who would win that battle? I don't know. That's the beauty of the sport. It's like this thing, A plus B does not always equal C. You know what I mean? Like jiu-jitsu is just, there was a famous documentary that you just referenced without meaning to, that was called Jiu-Jitsu Has No End. And it was by Hobson Mora. And it's a short documentary on YouTube. You can watch it. It's very beautiful. And it's that idea that like, it is life. Jiu-jitsu is life, because no matter what level you achieve, there are doorways you haven't opened yet. There are paths you haven't gone down. And you might be ahead in some ways and you might slip in other ways. And the beauty is in the pursuit. That is what we do here. We get people that can appreciate that the beauty is in the pursuit, not the reward. The rewards will come, just like they would come in your personal life. If you become the woman that you're meant to be, you're way more likely to find the right relationship. You don't say, when I find the right relationship, then I'll become a woman of quality. You don't say, when I'm promoted, then I'll learn how to work hard. You become what you are meant to be first. Then the universe almost takes note and says, oh, because you know what? It's undeniable. Like to be honest, I cannot wait to give Meredith her blue belt. I'm going to make her do 3 ranking matches, but I can't wait. And I can't wait to make her stand in front of every single person because she is shy. She keeps to herself. Every time I walk by and I'm like, do you have any questions at all? It's almost like right behind her eyes, I see the question. She's like, no, I think I got it. And I'm like, Meredith, just ask the question. You know what I mean? Because it's like, I'm an open book and like, there's no dumb question. I can't wait to get her in front of the class and say, listen, like these are the reasons she's being promoted. And it's like, you know what it also does? I don't feel that I did much in it when I promote people in this school. Like, yeah, you came to me. Yeah, you trusted my information and everything. But if I had been like striping you and like pulling your hand and saying, come with me and da-da-da, and then you get promoted, it's like, yeah, I was a big part of that. I'm almost no part of your guys' promotion at all because you show up, you stay consistent, you practice the information, you have to become self-motivated, you have to pour the energy in, you have to get through the plateaus and the setbacks and all those things to get to that next level. When I give you a belt, it's kind of like, people always want to thank me, like, thank you so much, James. And honestly, my most normal response is like, thank yourself. Like, what did I do? I provided an environment that you took advantage of the environment and you acquired the skills. I didn't do anything. I just said like, hey, this is how you do this. And you did it. So for all the people that might think like, oh, I wish that, no, you don't. You don't see the magic right now. You don't see how it's helping you to a degree that you can't even imagine. And in your fantasy world, you think like, I just wish it was easier. No, you don't. What you want out of this is you want to grow as much as you can as a human being and as a martial artist. And if you do that, one day you will thank me and say, you know what? I learned so many things from your academy that had nothing to do with jiu-jitsu. And that's why I appreciate you. That's it. That's the magic.
Yeah, it strengthens your mind more than anything. I mean, if you can go willingly on a mat and have people try to break your limbs or choke you out consistently and you stay calm, I mean, that's the biggest thing in my opinion, is being able to regulate your emotions in life in general, regardless of the situation. And jiu-jitsu teaches you that, and a lot of martial arts in general, because it forces you have to think about other things. You can't just focus on, oh, I'm about to pass out. You need to pull their arms back. You need to, have a defense to try to get out of it. if you're, when you're new, it can be intimidating and you're just, get me out of this, and you tap. But when you stick with it, and like me, the stubborn person I am, I'm like, break it. I'm going to pass out. I don't care. I'm not going to tap. I will not tap until the very last moment. And some people, it's concerning because they're like, this feels like it would be painful. But it's like, that's how you see what you're capable of, because you're pushing yourself mentally and you're pushing your limits. And then when you go into your day-to-day life, and you have people that, like, I'll talk about jiu-jitsu at work and people think I'm insane. When I talk about, like, oh yeah, my shoulder pops out of place like once every couple weeks, or multiple times a week before physical therapy. And, I was having some strong ass guy kick me in the leg 5 times with basically no power, just the strength of his leg, and it was swollen the moment I left and is bruising today. And they're sitting there like, why are you doing that? And it's like, because it just goes to show what you're capable of. It's all in your mind. 99% of why you can't achieve what you need to achieve is because you think you can't.
And you just touched on another topic that I'm so glad we can finish with. It destroys illusions in your life. Like when you are a white belt and someone wraps your neck for the first time, you panic and instantly, most people surrender instantly. And they actually think in their mind that that was the barrier. Like that was the line. That was the maximum amount of stress, discomfort. Oh my God, I almost died. They had my neck. And what you find out is like, that is an illusion. Mm-hmm. Not only was that nowhere near your barrier, if it was life or death and you had just a different mindset and a different understanding of the situation, you could push so much further. You were nowhere, you weren't even close to being in danger when they first got your neck. Mm-hmm. There was so many solutions you could have presented. Well, guess what? That's like life. So many times, like when you feel like you have no power, you have no options, you have no way out, there are countless things you can do. You just don't see them. So jiu-jitsu helps to clear your lens and gets rid of the illusions. And honestly, sometimes there is no answer. Sometimes you're rolling with Danny. He's sunk in a choke despite all of your emotions, despite all of your anger, despite all of your strength, despite any information you could possibly have, despite every one of those things, you might not be able to do anything about your situation. Mm-hmm. Well, guess what? There's a freedom in that. There's an acceptance, and sometimes you might have to look at your life and it's in complete shambles and you're in nothing but darkness. You have terrible friendships, and you might have to accept that, you know what? That is actually the truth of my situation. But the moment you get to the truth of things, you can take proper action. When you're living in illusions, you can't change your life. Mm-mm. Jiu-jitsu forces you to clear your lens and it helps you break through illusions. And being able to do that sets you right in the world. It gives you a clear perspective to say, what can be done? I will do that. Or maybe there's nothing I can do for these things, so I'm not going to focus my energy on that. I'm going to apply my energy to where it counts. Mm-hmm. That's money right there. Yeah. So we have about 15 minutes left. We're about to hit our hour and a half in 15 minutes. And this has been stellar. I want to open the floor to you because we've basically built up, the rough part of your pandemic. We haven't really got to where you are today yet, but I wanted to open it up to you to anything that you want to tell, any part of your story that you think matters, any topic that you want to discuss, and any perspective you want to hear about. I'm going to turn the floor over to you the next 15 minutes. If you just want to continue with your story after the pandemic, do that. Mm-hmm. If you want to talk about a current struggle you're dealing with, do that. Mm-hmm. If you want to talk about the Emma that sits here today versus the Emma that you were discussing, in high school, like how you've changed, anything you want. But I would like to, that's how we'll kind of conclude these 2 podcasts. The floor is yours.
Yeah, I think the only other semi-crucial part of my story, especially during the pandemic, would be once I started to make the money that I was making, it became it was a weird struggle for me because I had felt, it was funny, I actually, I hate taking pictures and videos and listening to myself. And a couple years ago, I made it a point of, I'm going to look back on my life and I'm not going to have any documentation. So I do this thing where I'll take pictures or videos on Snapchat and I don't send them to anybody. I just save them because Snapchat will be like, oh, a year ago today, this is what you were doing. And last week, a year ago today, and mind you, that's, I was making 6 figures. I was in better shape, life was okay. And I was laying on my couch and I was like, I'm miserable. I'm not happy. I have nothing to live for. I have no hobbies. Like, I make this money, but I don't have anybody to enjoy it with. And it showed me, because it was kind of like we were talking in the leadership class of like, oh, you think once you get to this point, then you made it or you got it. And that's not how it was at all. And I feel like that's also how a lot of people, like my family, especially my sisters, would look at me, and it was kind of like a weird envy I got, especially for my one sister, that I remember it the most when we went out to eat for my grandma's birthday. We surprised her. It was like my whole family. Long story short, we're sitting at dinner and I'm sitting by my grandparents. And this is like over the past couple of years, I've tried to grow my relationship with them because they're the only grandparents I have left. And I'm sitting by them, and my grandma's brother was there, and she whispered to my grandpa and was like, hey, can we cover Larry's bill? Like, his birthday's in a month for his birthday. And I'm sitting there like, it's your birthday. Why the fuck are you paying? Like, I'm confused. So anyway, the dinner goes on, and then I'm like, you know what, this is stupid. So I, like, towards the end, found the waitress and was like, hey, here's my card. Can you just cover the whole bill? Because then, and we were being a pain in the ass anyway. I'm like, that way it's easier. I end up leaving before everybody else because I drove myself, because that's how I am. I want to leave when I want to leave. And my one sister was like, yeah, I'm ready to go. My one cousin. So I drove him back to his car, whatever. When we left, it was kind of my aunt was trying to pay, and she's like, what's the bill? Like, where are they? And she's like, oh, they're covered. And, some people had a couple drinks and they were like, what's going on? And I'm just like, all right, you ready to go, Elizabeth? Let's go. So we leave and we're driving, and it's just her and I, and she doesn't drink much, but she has anxiety. And so she was drinking, and she's like, I really wonder who covered the bill. And I'm like, I did. And she's like, what? And she's the oldest. And I'm like, yeah, Grandma was asking Grandpa if they could pay for Larry's meal. And I'm sitting here like, it's your birthday. If anything, somebody should be covering your meal. And it just didn't make sense to me. And she looks at me and goes, stop making me and Hannah look so bad. That's my other sister. And I'm like, okay. Like, and that's definitely how her perspective was on a lot of stuff. And it was kind of like an expectation that my family set of, not my whole family, but I just always felt like they looked at me like I was crazy. And that same car ride, she was asking me, because I was like, oh, are you talking to any guys, or like, what are your relationships? And she asked me the same thing. And I was like, you know what? I'm at a point in my life where I don't want anything. I want to work on myself. Jordan Peterson has a response to somebody's question. And they were like, what do you look for in a person, or how do you know when you found the right person? And he said, well, I think the answer is, what are you working on to earn that person? Like, how are you bettering yourself? And I said, and that's where I want to be. I don't feel like it's fair to ask for somebody to grow and, improve themselves alongside me if I'm not doing the same thing. And so I need to be working on myself and be confident in myself as a woman, and being content alone, so that I can do that. And she laughed at me and said, good luck with that. And so that's kind of the perfect example of, I don't know if it was those responses that also led me to have this, but I had a very long period of time, I'm still working on it, where the money I was making, I felt like I did not deserve. And like, to the point where anytime I would go, and at one point, like, depending on when, I would get Starbucks like 3 or 4 times a day before work. I could not go through the drive-through without paying for the person behind me. Every time. And like, a girl I work with last year got a house, and I don't know what it is. I have like this really strong empathy towards people. Like, so her dad was never around in her life. Her mom, was there, but like, they had their struggles, their ups and downs. And she got this house with her now fiance, and it's just her and her brother. Her brother has his own struggles. And I always have admired like her work ethic. She's a very hard worker, very intelligent. Don't get me wrong. She's got like, sometimes her emotions she needs to regulate better, but I always admired, from what she came from, she always busted her ass, and she never saw it. We went out to eat one time, and we had a couple margaritas, and I was like, Ashley, I hope you know, like, I admire how hard you work, and I'm proud of where you've come, and I'm so happy that you found, her fiance's name is Stone. I'm like, I'm so happy you found Stone, and like, her ultimate goal in life is to be a mom. I'm like, you're going to be such a good mom. You're going to, like, you are a very strong woman. And I could tell in her face, like, nobody had ever said that to her. Well, when she got her house, with knowing like kind of how her family situation was and all that, I like was like, I need to get her something. I spent like $700 on like, I bought her like an air fryer. I bought her like random dishes. I bought her like bulk toilet paper and paper towel and all of this stuff. And I still to this day, like, I, I'm a strong believer in what you give out, you get back. But I almost take it sometimes to like the next level. Like when Danny said that he got his house and he was talking about like, there was like a couple things that just, he's like, yeah, I put down the down payment for this. And then my garage door at my current like apartment broke. And then I had this. And he's like, and then I need to buy a lawnmower because the only thing I want to do is ride on my lawnmower and smoke a joint. And I'm like, sounds about right, Danny. And he's talking about how expensive it was. And I'm not shitting you. My first thought was, I could buy him a lawnmower as like a housewarming gift. And I had to be like, Emma, relax. Like, you don't have to do that. But it's a very weird struggle for me. The same thing when my dad retired, we were supposed to go to Hawaii because that's where my parents met and got married, even though they're both from Michigan. And it was always my dad's thing that his whole time working, we're going to go to Hawaii when I'm retired. We're going to go to Hawaii. He retires and he's like where I think I get my fear of like money and struggling from. He's like, it's just, with how times are and, with my pension and all this, and we'll go eventually. It's just, and I was pissed. I'm like, I'll pay for the whole trip. I can use my savings. I can pay for everybody's flights. And he's like, no. But I'm like, I will get this money back. Like these memories, we won't be able to, you can't tell me that you're not going to, in 10, 15 years, look back and be like, oh, remember when we were on the beach and I had just, 25 years of my life I dedicated not only to supporting my family, but supporting a city and responding to people that got in car accidents or had overdoses or died in a house fire. You earn that. And so that was a big thing and I feel like it really, being here has helped because it's kind of given me a different like sense of confidence being around similar or like-minded people of, I have earned everything I do, because the people I work with will still kind of comment when it'll be Wednesday and I'll be like, oh, I really don't feel like going to class today. And they're like, don't go. You got up at 6 a.m. and went for a walk and you went the past 2 days. And I'm like, but if anything, on days like today are the days I should go, because I shouldn't let my emotions determine how it's not like I'm sick or I nearly have a broken arm or something like that. No, I just don't feel like it. And if we went off of our feelings, we wouldn't get anywhere. And so that's definitely what I'm still working on, but I'm getting better at.
Girl, you just tapped into stuff that I want to talk about for the next hour. But I'm going to tell you something that I could never articulate well, but I've experienced throughout my entire life. And then Jordan Peterson kind of said it extremely well when he was talking about elderly patients. He said, don't ever do something for them that they can do for themselves. He said that when you're working with elderly patients, he said, like, these are people that don't have much left to feel really great about. So one of the rules they have in like the nursing homes is like, don't do anything for them that they can do, because you're going to steal their last little bit of like, it's through doing work is where fulfillment comes, or like feeling capable. And I've learned, even with professional fighters, this is going to blow your mind. If I do too much for them, they fall flat on their face. You cannot be a crutch for someone that has a healthy set of legs. If the people that I've given the most to appreciate me the least and end up self-sabotaging themselves the most. It is the most bizarre phenomenon ever, but I swear, people that need my help, if it's something that they have the ability to remedy and I remedy it for them, I literally am like cutting the legs out of my own friends. And I used to have the opposite mindset that you had, where I feel like I owe the world a great debt. And I'm like, I am not special or anything like that. And if I have all these nice things and I see those qualities in others, they deserve what I have. Well, you really have to put a microscope on someone's life, because, yeah, on the surface, they might seem to be the same way as you, but are they doing all the personal progression? Did they go through 75 hard? Did they go through those moments in your life where you had to stand face to face with your dad and say, I'm not getting in that car? Like, you can inspire people, and you should. I believe if you put yourself in order, you should do everything in your power to inspire other people that are good people, to bring out every bit of greatness that they have within them. But you cannot be their crutch. If you do that, you are harming them. And maybe it's just a deep psychological harm that doesn't show on the surface, because you'll get the like thank yous and the appreciation and everything like that. And then they do less for themselves. Like, I don't know. I can't fully explain it well, but I have witnessed it time and time again. Now my fighters, like, if they completely don't understand a new process, like how to get all of their medicals done for a fight, like the first time I will explain it, I'll make it very clear, and then guess what happens their next fight? Hey, James, I need to get my medicals. Back in the day, I'd be like, okay, I'll set up your blood appointment, I'll set up this and that. When I don't make them be responsible for doing the things that they need to do, they fall on their face more often in their life. Versus if they reach out to me and say, all right, you know what to do, handle it. Well, I don't have the number. Look it up. I'm not sure where. And then you know what they do? When they handle it and get through it, they become more efficient. And they feel better that they took care of it themselves. Mm-hmm. So it's like, it's a very bizarre thing. It's almost like guilt for if you're living a good life, you feel like, oh, but like, I don't know if I fully deserve this. And other people deserve it too. Like Danny should have his lawnmower. If Danny wants his lawnmower, he should be inspired to go do what is necessary to get that lawnmower. Then when he has it, there's a real gratitude for it. And there's the process by which he had to acquire it versus don't you dare take those obstacles away. That's how I look at it now. Like, I should never remove obstacles from someone's path that I care about or like, because they have to become the person that handles the obstacles. That's the secret to their happiness and their fulfillment. So like, don't you dare take away their obstacles. Inspire them, motivate them. If you can give them information that can pull out their greatness, do so. Mm-hmm. If you can pour good energy on them that makes them like, you know what? I'm going to get that lawnmower. Like when Danny says that, you hype, hell yeah, you need to do that. How are you going to make that happen? Are you going to take a couple extra privates? Are you going to do a little bit more website coding at night? Like what is your plan to make that happen?
Yeah.
Because then it brings out the best of him. Also, this is kind of like the Twilight Zone, but I don't know if you ever heard the story where my aha moment that the American dream was not the American dream happened to me on a couch at like 3 a.m. on a Tuesday. Did you ever hear this story? I like couldn't sleep one night, and I was being like tormented by my brain, like that I was so unhappy and I wasn't living the right life, and it's like I was being a failure. And I'm like looking around, I'm like, I have my Cobra in the garage. I've got a 72-inch TV in my bedroom. I've got a 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath, 2-car attached garage house in my, I think I was 22. I'm looking at all these things and I'm like, and yet my brain is like, you're failing. Like, this is not the way you're supposed to be living. You suck, bro. Like, my brain was like telling me that like, you are not on the right path. And it's funny because when you said the couch, it popped in my brain. And I'm like, what do you mean? And I'm sitting there like analyzing my thoughts. And it was like, you're not doing something that brings fulfillment to your life. You're not challenging yourself and growing every day. You're not bringing out the greatness that you know that you have to bring to the world. Like, you're James Gray, the service advisor, sitting at a desk talking to people about the weather and handling basic computer reports. Like, you're more than that. And if you don't bring that version of yourself to life, it is a disservice to everyone you will ever encounter. I had that revelation in the middle of the night, and I wish I had my wallet with, actually, it's right there. I can't reach it, but I'll show you after the podcast.
The card.
Oh, I showed you at the thing.
Mm-hmm.
That was the next day, Emma. Mm-hmm. The next day I went into Champion Chevrolet and I put in my 2 weeks the next day. And I looked at that stupid business card on my desk and I picked it up and I held it for minutes, like a movie, where it was like James Gray Jr., service advisor. And I was like, this chapter is closing now. I appreciate the lessons. I learned a lot about people. I learned a lot about life. But it's time to shut this chapter and bring out the James Gray that this world deserves, that my friends deserve, that my family deserves, and that can be a light and an inspiration for a lot of people. And it was like, that was one of the single greatest, most important days of my life, was tapping back into like, that's what you owe the world. Mm-hmm. So to like come full circle, don't make things easier for people. Inspire them to become the people that can endure the difficulties of life, and not just endure them, that can triumph, because that is the greatest gift that you can give anyone in the world. Your children, your friends. That's where parents go wrong. Mm-hmm. They pour love on their child and they remove every obstacle from their child's path that they can, and then they raise a child that has no inner fortitude. They have no inner flame. They can't handle any opposition because mom or dad solved
They
everything.
didn't earn anything.
You have to bring out greatness in others if you love them. That's what you should do.
Yeah.
So I'm sure the attitude Ashley Eichner is probably standing out there being like, James told me 1 o'clock. But I'm not cutting this short. I'm going to let this go another 5 or 10 minutes. Just, this is actually how I want to end it, because you're about to give a presentation on this today, Emma, at our course. 3 to 5 years from now, what are you going to be, Emma? What are you seeking? What are you aiming at? For all the listeners that sit down and like, God, this girl's killing it. Like, what is the bullseye that you're aiming at in the next couple of years?
Well, before I get into that, this place has definitely, like you said, don't inspire people to do that. It's showed me how to do that. And it's funny because Ashley, a couple weeks ago, and mind you, when I would like be that giving, I didn't want to thank you. I would never, I hid the stuff in the back of her truck and like left before she could even say anything to me. And I always did that. And I don't know why, but I just didn't want them to feel like I needed recognition. But through me coming to the gym and always being, I started to see, like at the beginning of the year, because I am the way I am, I went around at work and I'm like, what are your New Year's resolutions? And they would try to give me like I'm going to eat healthier. Okay, what does that mean? And I would like push people. One of the guys I work with, he would get McDonald's every single day for lunch. He's had fast food like twice this year. He would drink an energy drink every single morning. And I'd always look at him and be like, you know how shitty those are for you? He's only had like 2. He'll have 1 a month. And then like Ashley, she's like a lot more closed off with what she's doing, but I can tell she's like eating better. We have a newer guy that started and he like was talking to me about how he's like working on how he's eating and he's been like going to the gym and stuff. And I was making a comment on his day off to Ashley. I was like, yeah, Aaron was talking the other day about how he's like been working out and stuff. And it just, cause like I'll ask people when they're like complaining, I'll be like, how much water have you drank today? What did you eat? And so I was like, it looks like he's, he hasn't been super vocal about it, but sometimes people are, sometimes I think a little embarrassed because of maybe where they've gotten to. So if anything, I'm just like, awesome, good for you. And I was like, that makes me so happy to hear. And Ashley, if you knew her, you'd understand, but in the most like, just shit tone was like, yeah, because being around you makes us want to be better. And I was like, I didn't say it, but that was the nicest thing that she's ever said to me, because that just goes to show that me just living the life that I should be living and going to practice, because they see me change for jiu-jitsu. I get there and I'm like, yep, got up this morning, went for a walk or whatever, or was at class for 2.5 hours last night, got up and I'm going to change and go do it again, because what else do I have to do? So yeah, that was awesome. But so Emma, 3 to 5 years, I'm trying to think of, because I have my list in my car. So the first thing that is big with me that I just recently kind of discovered is I want to be stronger in my faith. I've been kind of slowly like getting into that. And I feel like just the small bit that I've opened up has really helped. I'm an avid overthinker. I like to overanalyze everything. And it's given me kind of an opportunity to, there's definitely some things that are in my control, how I show up for myself. And if I push myself to do things, whether or not I want to do them. When I woke up this morning, I did not want to go run 3 miles with Tiffany once I got up, but I'm like, what am I just going to sit here and do nothing? Get your day started. Let's go. Went and did it. But it gives me a kind of things that are out of my control, like, oh, maybe this person I'm talking to, I don't know how this is going to work out. And what if I sabotage it? Or what if they end up being a bad person? Just live in the moment day by day, and the rest is out of my control. And if anything, it's gotten to the point where I'm like, if they're a bad person, that's between them and God. It has nothing to do with me. And that has been a very comforting feeling. Ideally, if we're talking 5 years, I would like to be married at that point. And that I'll be 30, so I want to have 1 to 2 rental properties at that point. I went into more specifics. I did like a bullet point list, and then I went into more specifics. One thing that I like that I wrote down is, you had asked us, what kind of car are we driving? And what I wrote down is, I'm driving the same truck because I just recently got it, and I was driving a 2008 Toyota Corolla at 225,000 miles that I had actually just popped up in my story. I took a picture of it, and I said, in all caps, I was like, I named it Walter. I was like, this is Walter. He has automatic windows. windows and an aux cord. Life is so great. Because before that, I had manual everything. I was driving an older Corolla. I bought that for $3,200 cash, and I drove the shit out of it. People that know me, they were like, you act like you're driving a race car. I'm like, fuck yeah, I am, because you want to challenge me? I'll push this bitch as hard as I can. And then it was just causing issues, and I was to the point where I could easily afford a new vehicle, but for the longest time, I'm like, why? So got the truck. But anyway, I put in my notes, I'm driving the same truck, but it's a little bit more beat up because I'm working on my house and the rentals. And, trying to think of what else. I'm more content with how my family is living their life. I hope they're living their life, but that's not up to me. I don't have control over that, and I just hope I have more peace with it at that point. And I'm working for myself and working more than I'm working now because I enjoy it. So way over 40 hours a week, but I'm on my own schedule.
I love it. And I can already see it. Like I've always had a wild imagination and a vision. I can see it.
And I'm a blue belt, where I think a lot of people would be like, 5 years, why not purple belt? I'm a blue belt almost to a purple belt because, again, I don't want to focus on that. But after 5 years, I know that I'll be there.
I love it. I love it. And there's only one thing that's been on my mind since you've said it that I haven't addressed, so I have to go back to it really fast. When you were in that car and your sister said to you, "You're making us look bad." That to me is one of the most depressing lines I've heard in a podcast in a really long period of time, because it tells me so clearly how her mind is wired. And that right there is the victim mind in such a quintessential example, because you did something great that the world should have a lot more of. You said, my grandparents should not be responsible for the dinner on their birthday. I'm going to step up and do something. And instead of that being super inspirational, super motivational, instead of your family like wanting to celebrate that, like, man, Emma, that was wonderful.
And my older sister.
So I'm saying, instead of your sister saying, I don't even know if I have the heart to do that. I don't know if I would spend my money to that level on my grandparents. You did it without any, like, you just wanted to do it. You didn't even want recognition for it. You weren't doing it for the recognition. You were doing it because it is what is right. And the response was, you're making us look bad. The reason that's so depressing to hear is not because of how it must have felt to you. It's because I realized the prison cell she lives in. That's the same person that when someone starts changing their life and finding the right tools, finding the right environments, subscribing to the right information, instead of saying, wow, I'm inspired by this. Maybe I could do something like that too. I need to talk with Emma and learn what she's doing. Maybe I should start 75 hard. Maybe I could do that too. Instead, they say, like, I can't believe you did that. It's depressing to my soul because I'm like, that woman, the jail door might have been slightly open. She shut it, stuck the key in from the outside, locked it, and threw it. It's like, those are the people in life that will never find the fulfillment and happiness that they deserve because they're not inspired by others that are doing the right thing. Objectively, that is the right thing to do. It was wonderful that you did that. It was a great gesture. And yet it caused her to believe that, like, how could you make us look bad? How about you step up and pay next time? Mm-hmm. How about you do what's right next time? How about we're a set of sisters that set the gold standard? How about we do things the way that we're meant to do them and we don't compete against each other? I elevate and you elevate and we celebrate each other's wins and we motivate each other and we inspire each other. How about that, mm-hmm. Elizabeth?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And I know that she'll watch this and she'll be like, well, I meant it as a joke. And I got over it a long time ago because I still love her for who she is. And I hope and wish the best for her. But I've realized that we're not similar.
And genuinely, maybe in the forefront of your psychology, you did mean it as a joke. But that comes from somewhere. So yeah. If you don't realize that when you said that, let's say you were kidding or whatever, to even have that thought and that feeling ties into a level of your psychology that you don't understand. You need to sit alone and meditate. You need to reflect on your life, and you need to reflect on who is on an upward trajectory and what you can learn from them and where you are currently. And if you can do that, you could go through tremendous personal reflection and growth and change that 5 years down the road, you would look back and say, oh my God, I'm so happy I did that, but very few people will. So Emma, it was another wonderful podcast. Ashley might be out there ready to throw hands with us, but I just couldn't cut this short. I mean, we just filmed another hour and 40 minutes. I think it was a beautiful episode. I think you have a lot of great insight for the world. You have so many great perspectives. I hope you keep talking, you keep sharing. You know, you have a lot to offer, and I hope you recognize that and continue to do it. Not for a sense of what you'll get in return, because I know that's not why you do it, but because the world needs more lights. There's plenty of darkness, there's plenty of haters, there's plenty of people that will try to undermine everything good or will try to point out where the hero stumbles. That's the norm. We need